Final Fantasy VII Remake was no stranger to introducing new elements to the beloved story. With the concepts of Whispers and Fate, it became clear that Square Enix wanted to approach the remake of Final Fantasy VII as more than a simple one-to-one recreation, but as an elevation or enhanced offering of the original story. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth built upon that notion, introducing a fascinating new concept: worlds. Zack Fair, who survived at the end of Remake, exists in worlds outside of the one the party inhabits, and we've even seen Cloud, Aerith, and Sephiroth appear throughout multiple. Though we know very little, the context and information we do have is enough to understand what exactly a world is and what this concept could entail for the final chapter of the FF7 Remake trilogy. At the beginning of Chapter 18 in Final Fantasy VII Remake, we see the scene transition as the party is surrounded by whispers, warding them from Sephiroth. As the smoke clears, we see Midgar covered with a dome of whispers. As a soldier steps into the frame with the tip of a sword, the camera pans up, revealing the Buster Sword and a man with black hair, First Class Soldier Zack Fair. As he makes a comment, the camera flips to the barrel of a Shinra trooper's rifle, panning out to reveal an army preventing Zack from going any further. For new fans of Final Fantasy VII, the question immediately was, who is this guy? Or, why does he have Cloud's sword? However, for longtime fans of the original, this cutscene changed everything. Incredibly, fans had seen this cutscene before, over a decade before the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake. This was none other than Zack's last stand at the end of Crisis Core, where he bleeds out and dies. Why would the development team show us a remade cutscene of an event that takes place years before the present? The question would not be answered in the slightest. After the final battle of Remake against Sephiroth, we return to the outskirts of Midgar to see Zack standing alive. Having beaten all the Shinra personnel, he limps over to Cloud, only to be knocked down on his feet as Midgar is engulfed in a strange bright light. There's one key detail that's different though. A bag of chips passes by Zack's feet, and the stamp breed showcased on the product is completely different from the one we saw throughout Midgar. While Remake left us with more questions than answers, the truth, or at least hints towards the truth, would be revealed in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The opening moments of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth take us immediately where we left off, with Zack walking with Cloud in tow to return to Midgar. Looking up to the sky, a strange rift looms. As Zack walks through the slums, a news broadcast begins playing, showcasing the entire party, including Aerith, unresponsive and placed on stretchers. As soon as he sees Aerith, Zack sprints off, chasing the helicopters that carry her. Upon reaching a clearing, Zack successfully defeats the Shinra troopers, picking Aerith up and heading to hide behind a few pipes. As he holds her lifeless body, Aerith's white materia falls from her hair and bounces on the ground. Zack can do nothing but cry, not able to make it in time to see the one he loves. This opening kickstarts Zack's involvement in Rebirth through a section of the main story called Interlude, A World Apart, which depicts Zack taking care of a comatose Aerith and Cloud. Amidst his care, he ends up searching for Biggs, where the two discuss the strange occurrences they've noticed, like the fact that their internal clocks are busted. These segments continue to occur every few chapters, with many strange conversations. Biggs recalls the Cloud we know, referring to him as tough and as a merc. While Zack is confused, he mostly shrugs it off. His conversation with Marlene, however, is something he cannot ignore. Marlene tells him that if Aerith wakes up, a scary man is going to kill her. She tells Zack that the man has long gray hair, swearing that she saw it, with a flashback showcasing Aerith talking to Marlene at 7th Heaven before the plate dropped. Zack continues to search for answers, wondering how he can wake Cloud up to prevent Aerith from dying. Throughout these cutscenes, we once again see various different stamps. Not one is the same, and it's purposefully placed each time it appears on screen. What could this mean? Back to the main party, Cloud and Aerith fall to the bottom of the temple after giving Sephiroth the black materia at the end of chapter 13. Instead of waking up at the temple, Cloud wakes up from the wheelchair we saw in Aerith's room. Aerith is no longer sleeping in her bed either. As Cloud questions his reality, Aerith shares that you could call it a homecoming, or homeward bound maybe? Let's just call it a dream. My dream, to be precise. She urges Cloud to play along and follow her, and she asks Cloud to promise not to look up. As the two leave her house, Cloud looks to the sky to see a massive rift, the same one we saw as Zack. Walking through the slums, Cloud and Aerith go shopping, where everything is strangely free, but one per person. One shopkeeper shares that he'll miss these moments, while another shares, only we all had more time. As the date continues, Aerith looks up to see 3 black feathers floating down, and Sephiroth speaks to her, saying, "So this is where you've been hiding, in a world that has accepted its fate, just as you must." Cloud continues to ask Aerith why she's acting weird, with the photographer pointing out, "You don't look like you're on a date, more like at a funeral. Just have fun while you can." Aerith then decides that the two should go to one of her favorite places, and the two head off to the church. In the meantime, we see Zack sitting on the steps of the church, contemplating who he should save between Cloud, Biggs, or Aerith. As he thinks, Sephiroth walks right past him, marching toward the church doors. Zack yells out to the former soldier, asking if he wants a piece of him, and Sephiroth replies, "No, not you," striking the Masamune at Zack and pushing him backward. As the black whispers surround Zack, he's pulled into a strange environment filled with rainbows. He declares that this isn't over yet, pushing the whispers out of the way toward the light. Upon reaching it, white whispers and yellow flower petals surround him. As the wind blows toward a light, Zack declares he'll find a way, chasing the light that sits in front of him. The scene transitions now to Aerith and Cloud back at the church. Aerith here tells Cloud goodbye, telling him, "Whatever happens, don't blame yourself," as she gives him her precious white materia. As she walks toward him, the church begins to disappear into a white and rainbow light, and Aerith pushes Cloud into a portal beneath him. As he falls, Sephiroth begins to walk in. This scene is absolutely crucial to Aerith's fate in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as it essentially acts as her goodbye to both the player and Cloud. Though we won't be diving into this moment too much here, we highly encourage you to watch episode 2 of Under the Plate, The Truth Surrounding Aerith's Fate in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, to fully understand what this scene means for the future of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. As Cloud falls through the portal, a swirl of white whispers surround him. The same white and rainbow light is seen, with a seemingly limitless end to the fall. A black whisper then appears, attacking Cloud from all directions. When Cloud finally opens his eyes, Sephiroth appears with massive portals behind him. Scenes from Final Fantasy VII Remake begin to play throughout the space, and at last, we finally get the answers we've waited for since 2020. He tells Cloud, "Behold, the true nature of reality. When the boundaries of fate are breached, new worlds are born. The planet encompasses a multitude of worlds, ever unfolding. Some quickly perish, while others endure. Yet even the most resilient worlds are doomed to fade. Nevertheless, their loss is not to be mourned, for it is not death, but a homecoming that awaits them. And in the planet's embrace, all life is as one." We then see more scenes from Final Fantasy VII Remake, which take on new meaning with the discovery of worlds. As Cloud and Sephiroth continue to float, multiple eruptions of light appear in the front of the two. Sephiroth tells Cloud to let go of the past, for the future is bright. We are to bear witness to the reunion of worlds. The black whispers swirl together once again, creating a ball of light that showcases glimpses of the reunion. Cloud demands Sephiroth to leave him out of it, to which Sephiroth replies, "How very stubborn of you. Perhaps you need a little push." One more time, a new portal appears, with Sephiroth standing in front of it, smirking. Cloud slashes him, dissipating the one-winged angel into particles. As he falls into the portal, Sephiroth states, "I give you my blessing." Cloud then finds himself in the sleeping forest, white materia in hand from Aerith. Sephiroth notices, saying, "That doesn't belong here." He faces the black whispers, only for the scene to change once Aerith and the white whispers appear. Cloud eventually reunites with the party, and the team makes its way to the Forgotten Capital, where they are stopped by Sephiroth. Fighting back the whispers, Cloud makes his way alone to the altar, where Aerith is seen praying. Once he gets close to Aerith, the whispers raise up his sword against his will. Then Sephiroth begins his descent into the recreation of gaming's most iconic moment. However, this time, Cloud regains control of his sword, deflecting Sephiroth. For a brief moment, it seems like Cloud managed to save Aerith, but reality strikes. Sephiroth retrieves his sword from her body, and blood begins to run across the altar. The scene plays out as expected, yet that strange rainbow light appears all throughout. As the final battle begins, this concept of worlds is pushed to the extreme. Zack and Cloud unite to face Sephiroth together in an environment similar to the Edge of Creation. Sephiroth assumes the bizarro Sephiroth form as Sephiroth Reborn, and Aerith appears in the final fight, joining Cloud to face Sephiroth together. Pushing back Sephiroth, he opts to retreat, leaving Cloud and Aerith alone. The two hold hands, with Aerith disappearing into lifestream particles. As Cloud returns to the altar, he sees the party mourning Aerith's lifeless body. However, once he passes the whispers, Aerith appears alone, and when Cloud goes to pick her up, she opens her eyes and smiles. And yet again, the rainbow light floats about, surrounding the two. Upon rolling credits, it's easy to believe that Final Fantasy VII Remake introduced multiverses. Aerith is saved in a parallel timeline, and the third game will largely depart from the original and showcase different possibilities, right? I'm here to tell you that is absolutely not the case. What if I told you that the concept of worlds aligns with everything we know about Final Fantasy VII? In fact, what if this was something that existed in the original game? So how does the concept of multiple worlds fit in with the rest of Final Fantasy VII? The answer lies with Sephiroth's surprisingly direct answer. It's not often he doesn't try to mislead Cloud. In Chapter 14, he states, "When the boundaries of fate are breached, new worlds are born. The planet encompasses a multitude of worlds, ever unfolding." Essentially, Sephiroth is stating that the planet, through the lifestream, is capable of housing endless worlds. Each time fate is breached or a path is altered from its intended course, a new world is created. However, this still doesn't explain how creating worlds is even possible in the game. There's an answer for that too. At the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the party defeated Whisper Harbinger, setting free the shackles of fate to march forth on a journey unknown. This event opens the door for all the worlds we saw throughout Rebirth, such as Zack surviving the Onslaught, Biggs being the sole survivor of Avalanche, and even Aerith and Red 13 breaking out of Shinra together, alone. Additionally, how do we know which world is which? The development team has cleverly left crumbs in the form of Stamp, a mascot of the Shinra Electric Power Company. Throughout the story of both Remake and Rebirth, we see stamp all over the place, whether on products, as graffiti, or even on advertisements. In the real world, stamp is a beagle. However, once we see our first created world with Zack surviving, we see a unique chip bag that has a terrier stamp. It's important to realize that this stamp didn't show up until after the party defeated Whisper Harbinger, as worlds were not able to be created at that point due to the Whispers. Throughout Rebirth, we saw a new stamp each time we saw Zack make a decision. This included a pug, a corgi, and even a chihuahua. It's important to make the distinction that a world and a timeline are two completely different things. Not once does Sephiroth or any character in the Remake series mention timelines, which are quite different from what we're looking at here. Within the world of Final Fantasy VII, there'd be no place for timelines to exist without uprooting the entire story and building something new. However, with the lifestream, the creation of worlds is entirely possible. The reality behind these worlds in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth can be boiled down to one conversation in the game, and it's incredibly easy to miss. It's important to note that earlier in September 2024, Naoki Hamaguchi referred to these different worlds as different layers and different timelines, but he's clearly not referring to the timelines some might be familiar with. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth never once insinuated that a multiversal-like effort was being made, but more alternate what-if worlds. Additionally, the question does refer to the worlds as timelines, so there's a chance that the translation was oriented towards that. Later in the same interview, Kitase shared a bit about Aerith's fate at the end of the game, and it lines up with everything outlined in Episode 2 of Under the Plate. When discussing the scenario with Tetsuya Nomura and Kazushige Nojima, we were also talking about how in the original it's showing Cloud's perspective, his feelings of immense loss, of losing someone that you love and having this hole in your heart. When considering how to depict this in the Remake series, we also thought about not only expressing this loss of someone who means so much to you, but also this sense of a person experiencing loss, being unable to force yourself to forget this person, and almost like an inability to accept it, struggling with the possibility of losing someone. So that was the thing we wanted to show in Rebirth. Cloud's inability to accept loss plays a key factor in the future of the story, and it's this desire that ultimately leads to the events of FF7 Rebirth. While we can at least pinpoint how exactly these worlds came to be, what are they? Why are they in Rebirth? The answer lies within both the original Final Fantasy VII and a small conversation in FF7 Rebirth. To begin, let's take a trip to Cosmo Canyon, the sanctum of planetology and the home of the most knowledgeable scholars of the planet. Regardless of topic, this is the place you go to if you're searching for any answers regarding the planet. The party heads here after Tifa's encounter with the weapons in Gongaga, reuniting Nanaki with his grandpa, Bugenhagen. Like everyone, I was simply astounded by the detail and scale of Cosmo Canyon, having loved the location in the original game. As I explored and listened in on some of the side conversations that were happening, one very interesting one struck my ear. Take a listen to this conversation, and keep in mind this context of worlds we've discussed.
Story with the group.
So, my parents are no longer with us. Here, that is. But I believe they're still out there, on another plane. I've been reading a bunch of theories about this alternate world in the hope of going there someday. And over the course of my studies, I stumbled across a fascinating theory. It addressed the issue of what the lifestream is, arguing that spiritual energy is actually a manifestation of our knowledge and memories. Like I said, it's a fascinating theory, but it's incomplete. What about our hopes and dreams? We remember those, don't we? So what if spiritual energy doesn't distinguish between our real, lived memories and the unrealized desires buried deep in our hearts? What if coming into contact with that energy allowed us to peer through the looking glass, so to speak? It's just an idea, but I hope to find the truth someday.
Well, isn't that splendid?
The lifestream holds not only the thoughts and memories of all living beings, past, present, and future, but also their hopes and dreams. The spiritual energy is living, and not only contains these memories of those dead, but also those unrequited desires they brought with them. The lifestream has its own will, a will that is colored by the life that returns to it. Everything is part of this cumulative whole, and these worlds, comprised of wills and memories, are simply a piece of it. Now, let's turn the page to perhaps the most telling piece of evidence, the lifestream sequence in the original game. When Cloud and Tifa fall into the lifestream together, she is able to travel into his subconscious and assist him in finding himself. His dreams, memories, and desires are all revealed at last, as the game reveals that it was Zack, not Cloud, who was enlisted as a first-class soldier. Doesn't this premise of dreams, desires, and one's subconscious sound familiar? That's because it is. This was a world in the original Final Fantasy VII, and there's even more to prove it. If you take a look at the background of the environment, a strange rift that's nearly identical in color and appearance outlines the edge of Cloud's mind. We see this rift once again at the very end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. What could this mean? Matching this up with the conversation at Cosmo Canyon, we can finally define what a world is. A world is created when fate is breached, fueled by a desired reality. Not everyone can create a world, as they must be in contact with the lifestream itself. We've seen worlds from Zack and Biggs, both of which are dead, Aerith, who has ties to the planet being a Cetra, and Cloud, who was submerged in Mako for years and suffered from Mako poisoning as a result. These worlds are created from the desired reality of a character, pieced together using memories from the planet. Biggs was able to accept his purpose and death in the Mako reactor world, yet we saw Zack time and time again run away from it. In Cloud's case, he denies the truth with Aerith in front of him. The key to these worlds is acceptance, regardless of it being death or something else entirely. Moreover, this isn't the first time we've heard about souls and their place within the planet. In Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cloud, Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge visit Jessie's parents to grab her dad's keycard. We learn that her dad passed out from overworking while he was inside of a Mako reactor. It was not found for half a day. As a result, he is essentially in a comatose state from Mako poisoning. Speaking to Cloud, Biggs and Wedge share Jessie's theory that her dad's spirit is stuck, trapped between his body and the heart of the planet. This theory links closely to what we heard in Cosmo Canyon. A random NPC shares a line saying, "I passed out on the job, Mako poisoning, but while I was unconscious, I had this dream." Jessie's dad is likely experiencing the same, dreaming in some world as his spirit is trapped between the body and the planet. This can even be looked at as foreshadowing for Cloud later on when he reverts to a Mako-poisoned state in Midgar. Taking a look at the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the pieces can start to align. Cloud has created a false reality that Aerith is alive and well through his perception of stopping Sephiroth's blade. Obviously, this is Cloud's desired reality. He of course does not want Aerith to die. As a result, has Cloud created a world through this? Has he wished for Aerith not to die deep in his heart to the point where he saw something so detached from reality? Additionally, is this his doing? Or could Aerith be assisting behind the scenes in an effort to preserve his mental sanity? It's fascinating to think about. With this context, the worlds within Final Fantasy VII Rebirth make perfect sense. This isn't some far-out concept that strays from the original game. No, this is an expanded concept that appeared in 1997 and is now taking center stage. The lifestream has always been capable of this, but now we're seeing its full potential expanded. Unequivocally, this concept has been brought to build up the most important scene of FF7, the lifestream sequence. To truly comprehend where the future of the remake trilogy is headed, we must break down and understand the various elements regarding worlds, including desired realities, the Rainbow Light, and Sephiroth's goal. Unrealized desires are a burden everyone in Final Fantasy VII carries. They've all lost loved ones and must grapple with this. Do you think Nanaki wishes his father was still with him, especially after learning the truth? How did Barrett feel when seeing the shell of the man who was once his best friend? Doesn't every character have something they wish were different? These desires might not be at the forefront of one's mind, but they're buried, deep down inside one's heart. Reality, whether we like it or not, is entirely determined by perception. Everyone perceives reality differently and has different desires for it. Not a soul on the planet doesn't have dreams for their future. But is it possible to achieve every dream? Where do these unfulfilled dreams go? Or is it all a facet of reality? In an interview, Kazushige Nojima stated that some of his inspirations when writing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth were Yogacara and Jungian psychology. The themes of these two topics revolve around human perception and the greater collective of humanity. Sound familiar? It should, as this is the lifestream. The original game focused heavily on the spirituality side of the lifestream, as it's based on the basics of many different world religions. Nojima has chosen to further enrich the themes of the original game by incorporating Yogacara and Jungian psychology to show new facets of the lifestream, and further detail it through the introspective lens of the characters. As seen with events like Cloud's mindscape in the original game, and even things like Jessie's theory on her dad's state, it's clear there's more to the lifestream than initially thought. The lifestream operates in mysterious ways, ever in a state of constant flux. Memories and wills return to the lifestream and add to its rich tapestry. But what happens when many strong wills mix? What about the complexity of human emotions? This is sure to cause turbulence. These concepts Nojima injected provide new and exciting events while still being rooted in everything Final Fantasy VII was, is, and always will be about. When considering these psychological and spiritual elements along with the occurrences in the original game, a clear vision starts to form. These elements might seem outlandish and shocking, but they're deep-rooted with everything Final Fantasy VII is about. Many scenes involving the concepts of worlds are accentuated by a rainbow effect. Why is this? Well, think about it. Rainbows are a refraction of light. A single bright white can be broken up into a full spectrum of colors. To think, 7 unique, brilliant hues are all part of a greater whole. They're hidden layers within a collective of light. The rainbow effect is actually a flag, letting us know that reality, or perception, has shifted. This is also a subtle hint that worlds are not some multi-timeline thing. They exist within one continuity, one collective. This rainbow is a simple piece of visual symbolism that brilliantly expresses the world concept. Everything in the world, due to the collective consciousness of the lifestream, is multifaceted. The lifestream is an ultimate will that houses the knowledge and desires of all beings within it. Just like Cloud, everyone lives in their own world, and the lifestream reflects this. Tying into some of the segments in the game, we can see Cloud and Zack in space made entirely of white light, similar to some imagery found in Advent Children. Zack even notices Cloud in his fight against Sephiroth without Cloud detecting his presence. Could this white light represent a point where worlds cross before it diffracts into its individual pieces? When Zack, much like Aerith in FF7 Remake, comes into contact with Cloud, he's drawn into the same plane as Cloud, joining the fight against Sephiroth. This place is also suspiciously similar to the Edge of Creation. The white light appears once again further into the battle when Zack sees a flash of light before finding a flower garden and muttering, "Aerith?" Additionally, a key scene in Chapter 9 when Tifa is traveling within the lifestream in sight of the weapon shows those close speaking to her through the planet. This is the planet telling Tifa through its memories of those beings that she cannot die. Her survival is essential for the planet and its people to survive. She even sees Cloud, faced away, slowly following Sephiroth. It's almost a warning sign to show her that she needs to save him before it's too late. Could these originally considered symbolic planes of existence in prior releases actually be tangible in the form of worlds? This layered perspective on worlds is closely tied to perception. Nojima's inspirations actually help support this. Yogacara is a school of Buddhist thought, and Yogacara itself refers to 8 perceptions. I'm sure many are familiar with our 5 perceptive senses of touch, taste, sight, sound, and smell. It's through these senses that we perceive the world, perceive our reality. However, in Buddhism, there's a 6th sense grouped among these, and it's the sense of the mind. The 6th perception is how we put the other 5 senses together to form an understanding. It's discriminatory and assigns labels to everything, be it a person, an object, or a phenomenon. Our sensory perceptions intake information while our minds form it into a cohesive picture for understanding. Now, where things get interesting is the other 2 senses. The 7th sense is our own personal feelings. It's whether we like something or dislike it. It's our persona, our feelings, and our desires. It all revolves around the self, or I. I want to save Aerith. I want to be a soldier. I want to become a god. I want to save the planet. These personal desires ignore other consciousnesses and paint a reality in a selfish color at times. There is a final sense, a sense that lurks beyond the other 7. It's almost like an all-encompassing consciousness, one that can be cultivated to reach nirvana. It's a base consciousness and is sometimes referred to as a storehouse for karmic seeds. It's an extension of the 7th sense of the self almost, brought in to incorporate your own perception into all perception. Only when the fetters of karma are abandoned can one ascend beyond the cycles of rebirth. What's important to remember here is that Yogacara involves perception and our individual relationships with that. What we perceive is a reality all on its own in a way. In dreams and meditation, we still perceive things as an outside force. We can feel, we can see, we can hear things that we are not interacting with outside of our mindscape. Dreams specifically connect to this concept. You can still use your senses within a dream. It's almost like an alternate reality, depending on how you look at it. Within a dream, you can still see, hear, and feel things, even think. Concepts in Jungian psychology connect to this with its ideals about collective unconsciousness. Dreams can be symbolically broken down, and these symbols can represent different aspects of the psyche and even common elements found throughout humanity, almost like the lifestream. However, despite this very deep and complex inspiration, these aspects don't need to be fully understood with degree-worthy nuance, as FF7 Rebirth uses this to further flesh out its own story outside of Yogacara and Jungian psychology, hence the inspiration Nojima took. Plus, even Yogacara has countless interpretations and subschools, as does Jungian psychology. These sorts of highly interpretative topics are just ripe to be reinterpreted. The purpose of these concepts within the remake trilogy is to inspect the original game's more spiritual and cerebral elements and present them in a fresh and richly detailed way, much like with the revamped visuals and combat. This is all in service of recreating the original game with an unprecedented level of refinement and respect. Character motivations, plot points, and even concepts contain the essence of these influences, but don't do so in such a way to abandon the original game's vision. The remake trilogy isn't telling us the story of Jungian psychology or Yogacara, it's retelling the events of FF7 by cherry-picking concepts that can be used to create an innovative remake experience. One of the biggest questions and talking points among fans is still Zack's role within the remake project. Zack had a smaller role in the original game, being a character that spurred most of Cloud's character development. In Crisis Core, we had the chance to witness Zack's personality without Cloud's memories and interpretations of him. Zack is peppy and passionate, personality traits that are still intact in the Interlude segments found throughout Rebirth. But what's up with this world Zack is in? Timeline-wise, how would Zack wind up in Midgar after the fall of the Sector 7 plate if, in the original continuity, Cloud made it to Midgar and lived there for 2 months before the escalation of events that led to this wanton destruction. At the end of Crisis Core, Zack dies at the end of September, which puts this version of Midgar somewhere near the end of December. As a reminder, Zack and Biggs both note that their internal clocks are busted as they wander through the slums. Is this reality, or perhaps an afterlife? Something is afoot. Before the two get separated at the end of FF7 Rebirth, Zack tells Cloud to save her, referring to Aerith. Some have interpreted this as Zack knowing that Aerith can survive, but if you look back on the cutscene of his interaction with Marlene, it's clear that he knows a bad man is going to kill Aerith. He just didn't know that it had already happened. All Zack wanted was to reunite with Aerith in Midgar, fueling his desire that led him to wander into the worlds we see throughout the game. This ties into the unresolved desires every character in the game is burdened with, and the want to manifest a desired reality. Interestingly, he can tie some aspects of Jungian psychology here. Cloud unconsciously uses Zack as a role model throughout FF7, and also unconsciously uses other characters as personality and reality anchors. Cloud ends up forsaking himself in order to be what he perceives others want him to be. He's fueled by the past, yet has a mental block preventing him from unpacking how all of this relates to himself. The concept of collective unconsciousness is also pushed by the ancients and materia. This is a physical representation of the concept. The incorporation of hard psychology helps raise the mental themes within FF7 to a higher level. These mental issues must be solved from the inside, much like Cloud's mindscape in the original game. The other worlds have their major actors stuck in a similar rut, not grasping the true nature of their reality. Zack, being the key proxy character of these interlude sections, is meant to communicate this to the player. Most of what we see of the alternate worlds is via Zack. We see him going through many divergences. He experiences many different outcomes, but it all boils down to Zack refusing to accept that things aren't in his hands anymore. As the interlude segments play out throughout the main story, we see multiple worlds created by Zack's decisions of who to save. This is seen through events like Marlene mentioning to Zack that Cloud tries to save Aerith but fails, and it ultimately leaves Zack determined to stop Sephiroth alone, no matter the cost. From his point of view, Cloud and Aerith are comatose, and he's being hunted as a soldier with a buster sword by Shinra. Zack has forgotten that Cloud is his living legacy, and insists upon trying to solve things himself, even alone at that, until the ending climax where he teams up with Cloud to put a stop to Sephiroth. The last we see of Zack in Rebirth revolves around him contemplating the nature of what he experienced, saying things like, "That couldn't have been a dream," and wondering aloud if the worlds can be reunited. This is the purpose of the remake trilogy being spoken directly to us. The trilogy utilizes elements from every FF7 project to make a cohesive whole by using familiar concepts of the lifestream. However, this means things will be whole, but not explicitly heavily altered. Death would mean nothing, and actually forsake FF7's core theme, the theme of life. Duality is one of the biggest concepts in Final Fantasy, Buddhism, and Jungian psychology. Two halves can make a whole, and they mean nothing without each other. Acceptance is the only way to salvation and understanding. The reunion is a concept within FF7 that involves those who have been injected with Jenova's cells. This forms an instinct-like mental state where they seek to return to Jenova, thus a reunion. Sephiroth's will overtook Jenova's after the events at Nibelheim Reactor, meaning that those with Jenova's cells now have a direct link to Sephiroth and are subject to his will, forming his own collective. This concept of a reunion is still at the forefront of the remake trilogy, however, things have been expanded upon in a major way. Sephiroth seeks to become a god, one who has absolute control over the world, which is, in this case, worlds, condensed into a collective. This desire to overtake the collective world also ties into Yogacara. The eighth sense is overcoming the concept of I and non-I, thinking that plagues humanity. If one were to become all-encompassing, This eliminates the non-I concept. Meanwhile, in Yogacara, when one achieves a perception of consciousness affirmation and rids themselves of the shackles of karmic past deeds, they can escape the cycle of rebirth and become a Buddha or a god. Sephiroth's ultimate goal is still the same as the original. However, the new elements of the remake trilogy add different subtexts. Sephiroth is fast-tracking his way to godhood, ignoring the rigorous growth required to become enlightened. He has his own perception. He is the son of Genova and has chosen to embrace it. The nature of his creation drove him down this dark path. And that is the truth of his reality, or world, even. This isolated form of consciousness is now a part of Sephiroth's goal. Everything must be him. He wants Cloud to join him, to immolate all Genova cells via the reunion. Cloud is truly Sephiroth's only shackle and link to the world, which is precisely why he tries to isolate Cloud and keep him in a bubble. As long as Cloud remembers Sephiroth, he will never fade away. This can be seen several times throughout the games as he drives a wedge between Cloud and his friends, and even when he tries to separate Cloud and Zack in the climactic final battle gauntlet. However, Sephiroth does not hold dominion over everything, as the wills of Zack and Aerith still try to help Cloud in stopping Sephiroth. His very conquest of the layered worlds has its own issues and other forces trying to prevent his plan from being carried out, and Sephiroth refuses to accept this. Sephiroth refuses to accept anything he doesn't desire, in fact. In the original FF7, Sephiroth's desire to have complete control over the world is stopped by Cloud and company. However, the lifestream, being what it is, contains Sephiroth's desires and knowledge. The world's concept in Remake uses this not only to dive deeper into the themes of the original game, but also adds a level of exciting grandness to this retelling of events. These worlds, built off the dreams and desired realities of those within the lifestream, grant access to even more power. Using the lifestream, Sephiroth is capable of accessing his previous and future memories. Hence, we see him appear with his wing from Advent Children. Like Aerith in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Sephiroth knew what was ahead, and that's why he led the party to defeat Whisper Harbinger to open the different layers of the lifestream, unlocking a fast track to becoming a truly all-encompassing god. His own lack of understanding will also lead to his downfall, just as it always has. The concept of worlds will play a major part in the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. As we've outlined, everything laid out in both Remake and Rebirth has been done so in an effort to elevate the human element of grief and acceptance. This will all culminate in a beautiful elevation of the lifestream sequence, certifying it as one of the greatest narrative payoffs in video game history. It already was in 1997, and it's only going to get better with the additions the team has elected to make. There's a clear materia which Cloud has now. As we know, materia is filled with memories and knowledge, but we see Aerith show this empty materia in the game to Red 13, sharing that the Whispers stole her memories, in turn making the materia clear. As Cloud receives the white materia from Aerith in Chapter 14, he trades with Aerith in the Sleeping Forest, and she gives him the clear materia. Could this possibly be a physical manifestation of Cloud's memories being hollow? Will we see this come into play during the lifestream sequence when his memories are sorted? Perhaps this is how he's able to view the rift in the sky. Or could the clear materia be a vessel ready to be filled with Cloud's grief of losing Aerith, turning it black? We'll have to wait for Part 3 to find out. But there's no doubt this materia will play a critical role in the finale. Additionally, how will Zack's story end? Like he mentions at the end of the game, he wonders if worlds can reunite again, even after parting. At the very least, it's almost a guarantee that Zack and Aerith will appear alongside the party in the final battle against Sephiroth, finishing the one-winged angel once and for all. Is this happier ending that Kitase mentioned truly going to be what many fans expect? Reuniting characters like Zack with their lover and friends? Or will the theme of acceptance ring true once more, giving our characters a deeper understanding of the lifestream and its properties. Ultimately, the remake trilogy is retelling the original plot. It keeps everything from the original intact, but has shifted the perspective. Reality is all in our heads after all. What's ultimately important is how the concepts of worlds examine what Final Fantasy VII is. These new elements are there to expand the purview of the events within the game. We get to see scenes from multiple perspectives, and the inspiration taken from psychology and religion is there to bolster this. The Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, as of now, has applied a meta veneer that re-examines the original. These new elements may reinterpret and expand many elements of the game, but what these elements do is offer a deeper understanding of what's going on, not change it. Even the titles of the entries so far don't insinuate the concept of change. To remake is to make anew. Rebirth is to be made again. Even Intergrade refers to a stage of evolution in a sense. Combining what the new inclusions in the trilogy are with the stated intent of the developers in interviews makes the goal of the project crystal clear, and the games themselves prove that despite the new coat of paint, the core of Final Fantasy VII is still intact. The key themes of Final Fantasy VII are life and death. Acceptance can only be gained when grappling with the ramifications of such things. Life and death is an obvious theme to pick up on, but it goes hand in hand with acceptance. That's a much harder pill to swallow than most seem to think. Throughout most of the original game, and even companion pieces like Crisis Core, Cloud does not accept who he is, and is always desperate to be something else. Cloud's depressive episode in Advent Children stems from his lack of acceptance of the losses suffered during his journey in FF7. Rebirth's apparent goal in the trilogy is to help set up this theme, and it's bolstered by its usage of Yogacara and psychology. This specific blend is used to great effect to set up the delivery on this theme. Aerith is the only character who has accepted how things are meant to be. She understands what's going on and tries to help keep things going in her own way. She wants Cloud to realize the scope of everything and accept reality. She may be gone, but like she told him in the church, don't blame yourself. It's up to him to stop Sephiroth, as he promised, and save the planet once and for all. While this is only our interpretation of worlds, only the developers know how the remake trilogy will intertwine them and utilize them to bring forth a satisfying conclusion. The development staff has made every effort to keep the story in line with the original game, but they have purposefully added story bits to keep players talking for years to come, as we're doing right now. With the interviews and resources we currently have, there's no doubt that the Final Fantasy VII Remake will finish the story as it goes in the PlayStation 1 Classic. However, these new elements bring new light and life to a story that players have cherished for generations, elevating many themes and elements that weren't possible in 1997. While the trilogy might not end the way many have hoped, with the teasings surrounding fate, all anyone can do is embrace your dreams and make every moment count.
Embrace your dreams. And whatever happens, protect your honor as a soldier.